driving.
This doesn't look good. I mean, here we are riding around this guy. He's flatlander drives in the middle of the road. Come on, we're switching places.
Well, this is just rude.
Hello, and welcome back to the On the Road Show with Danny and Robert, coming from Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative in separate locations. Somewhere Danny's out there on a winding road. So good to see you, Danny, and we welcome you to this episode. We have lots of great things to talk about today.
Well, it's good to see you again, Robert. I really honestly believe that, and I say that with truth. See, so sometimes you and I go back and forth a lot, but that's a lot of fun. And but today on the road with us, we have Dr. Jennifer Carroll. She's a professional learning lead at KVEC. And, the one good thing about Dr. Carroll, or Jennifer as we call her, because, she's kind of on a first name basis with us, but, she's, one time I said about Robert, it's like he's not from around here. Well, Jennifer's kind of from around here. She's from Pine Ridge. Anybody from Pine Ridge, it has to be a good person. It has to be a beautiful place. So, we welcome you, Jennifer, to our on-the-road session today. And not sure what we're in store for here, except we're going to talk about some micro-credentialing. And hopefully we can make it a little fun and educational, too.
Well, Jennifer, welcome. I do want to welcome you here, and great to have this conversation. Before we get that, Dan, you just mentioned something, and I have to admit, not being in the car with you is causing me some problems.
Oh,
so
no.
I have made myself, just so I can feel more comfortable, my own little stick puppet of you, just so I feel close to you.
Oh, no.
So
at least you got my good side.
This will make me feel better.
Yeah.
That you're there. Well,
I'm glad I'm comforting you even now.
I get to see two of you. How much better is that?
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So it could be creepier, best buds forever. But
nothing surprises me with you, Robert. So.
Okay, you want that here, Jeff? There you go.
I knew I was in trouble when you didn't respond to my email all week about what we were doing today. I knew I was in trouble. So
you were in big trouble. You were in big
Yeah.
trouble. So I'm going to just keep this here to make you feel comfortable. So,
Okay.
But back to Jennifer. And again, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to learn a lot today. We have been talking a lot about digital learning and digital platforms for learning. And in light of recent events, the need for more and more digital professional learning is even more apparent. So we've been working on micro-credentials. And so can you give us some background? What are micro-credentials? What's all the hubbub here?
Well, there are a lot of different definitions out there for micro-credentials. So I guess you really just have to get to the point where you agree on a definition with the folks that you're talking to. We had the luxury and the opportunity to participate in a collaborative effort with CCSSO and Digital Promise and a lot of different national organizations through a collective. The Certification and Licensure Collective was what the name of the group was. It was abbreviated CLC. And that group kind of came to an agreed upon definition of a lot of different national providers of micro-credentials. So what we agreed on is that a micro-credential is a competency-based certification of a discrete skill. So we know that in teaching and learning that there are a lot of skills and competencies that educators must have. And so a micro-credential gives an educator an opportunity to engage in professional learning around that skill or competency, and then demonstrate that skill or competency in order to earn a digital badge. So we were a part of that group, and we feel very strongly that group, that they have a rigorous and a high quality vision of what micro-credentials are. So that's the definition that we kind of settled on with that. But like I said, a lot of groups have different vernacular that they use to talk about micro-credentials.
So if an educator is getting a micro-credential, and I guess you use this part of their professional learning, so how is this different from the PD sessions that they currently have to go through?
Well, I probably wore this phrase out, but when you talk about a sit and get professional development session, at the end of that session, and someone like if I've done the training and I hand you a certificate, that certificate says, wow, Robert, wow, Danny, you did a great job of sitting in a chair for 6 hours. You are a good sitter, because that's all I know that you have accomplished. But with a micro-credential, when an educator submits evidence and artifacts that they have actually engaged in professional learning, and they're able to show their and show and talk about the impact that this learning has had on their professional practice, because they have implemented the learning within the context of their classroom or their school. We call this clinical professional learning, because just like folks in the medical profession who practice and learn within the context of a doctor's office or a hospital, this educator is learning within the context of their classroom and their school and their students. So when that learning is credentialed, what it is saying is that you have done a very good job of meeting the requirements of this micro-credential, that it shows evidence of an improved professional practice, and it shows evidence of an impact on student outcomes. And to me, that's what we're looking for in professional learning. We don't really care how well somebody sits. We're really looking for how well they internalize a skill or competency, how it impacts their professional practice, and then how it also impacts those students that they have contact with.
I don't know about Danny, but I'm just going to make this assumption about him, because as I'm in a sit and get, often I'm not really getting.
I'll agree with that. We did a sit and get recently on the road. I sat in the car, rode around with you, and you still didn't get it. You still want to drive in the middle of the road, almost run me over the hill, and I don't know. But
that's just
hopefully
rude.
You do better at micro-credentialing.
That's just rude. But anyway, my point being, Jennifer, Dr. Carroll, that you might sit, because now I'm finding myself doing emails, or I'm doodling, or I'm texting about, can you believe that person wore that today? So
some people might even be online shopping. I don't know anybody that would do that, but that could happen.
I don't know. But anyway, so with that type of micro-credential, or credentialing, it seems like in those cases where I've been in places like, why am I even here? This doesn't pertain to me. So how does teacher get choice in this then?
Gosh.
PD, okay.
Well, there's lots of avenue for choice. It could be that choice is limited in terms of conversations that educator is having with their evaluator. So the evaluator, the supervisor, their principal, whoever that may be, may have been going through the whole evaluation cycle with them and has identified, we've really got to work on formative assessment in your classroom. Every time that I've been in there, I've seen exit slips only, and we really need to delve deeper into what formative assessment is and how it can be used to advance student outcomes. So there could be that kind of conversation going on. So now as a teacher, I know that I need to improve my professional practice around formative assessment, so I can go to our micro-credentials are housed on the Digital Promise platform. So I might be able to go to the Digital Promise platform and find that exact micro-credential that I need. Maybe it's strategies related to formative assessment, so I can learn better about that. Or maybe it's like the micro-credential that KVIC has developed on assessment literacy. Maybe I need to expand what I know about assessment, and so I can seek that one. So that still has an element of educator choice, but it's being guided and directed by the evaluator or the supervisor. Or it could be just like this time that we're in right now of COVID-19, and I have been teaching online. Let's say I've been doing a lot of remote instruction. And something that I have found out is that I really need to tighten up some instructional strategies that I'm using with students, so that they become really familiar with them and they can use them in a remote environment. So then I might be able to go to the Digital Promise platform and find another micro-credential that fits that need. So then that is being driven by the practitioner. I'm saying, gosh, I see I really need to get better at this. So I'm gonna go online and I'm gonna seek out this professional learning. But it is very characteristic of a micro-credential to be personalized, because if I'm looking for one on formative assessment, There might be 12 or 15 related to formative assessment, but I have to find that one that really gets to the need that I have. Maybe I already know what formative assessment is, but I need to practice strategies. Or maybe I don't know what they are and I need to engage in a little deeper learning about what is formative assessment and how is it used in assessment literacy. So being driven by data, whether it be the evaluator tells me I need to know this, or as a PLC, we've looked at all of our student data and oh my gosh, we really, really need to work on establishing relationships with our kids because we're not getting deep enough into knowing our kids. Whatever it is, it's driven by data, but we're allowed to personalize our professional learning.
Danny, you look, you have a question, but you mind if I ask a question first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
You always get in front of me anyway. So
let's think about what you said. Let's say I have my classroom, Jennifer. I'm like, my students are engaged, and I've got to really work on this now. So where do I go? Do I have to travel somewhere? Is it going to take me hours and hours and hours? And how do I get this right now? Because I need it now.
Well, if you can let me share my screen, I can show you where to go.
Oh, that would be good to do. There we go.
that looks a lot best if you scooted me over there just a little bit. You know, you're.
I'm going to let you know
that's better.
how you look while I work on doing this.
All right. All right.
Let me ask you a question, Jennifer, while you're looking for those things, and you kind of already hit on it, but a lot of people don't understand that teachers in a classroom, you know, they think, well, they show up at 8 o'clock, they teach kids all day, they go home. They don't understand sometimes about all the other things you have to do, like recertifications, certificate renewals. Can these micro-credentials actually be used for hours to help those causes?
Well, they definitely can be used for those professional learning requirements. You know, in our different states are different, but in our state, a teacher has to have 24 hours of professional learning each year.
Right.
So working with their principal and their site-based decision-making council and their district professional development coordinator, definitely these micro-credentials can serve as that professional learning requirement.
Okay.
But we also, in our state, have the opportunity for educators working through a program that might be developed at a cooperative level or a district level to actually earn micro-credentials and engage in other types of competency-based professional learning that could lead to a rank change.
Right.
So that's some exciting new developments that KVEC has been working closely in connection with the Department of Education to be able to bring that to our region. And, you know, that might be something that Robert wants to talk about because we are very lucky to have Robert as part of our, you know, working with our micro-credentials. He is the policy lead on that. So he is working very closely with the Department of Education to, you know, bring that opportunity to KVEC.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Jeff, go ahead and go through this. We can talk about that other, because that continuing education option is a lot to talk about. But,
Okay, like I said, our micro-credentials from KVEC, we work closely through a contractual agreement with Digital Promise. And Digital Promise is, they're congressionally authorized to engage in a lot of the work that they do with schools across the world, not just nationally, but across the world. But one of those areas that they are definitely a leader in is that area of micro-credentialing. And they have a platform that issuers, which KVEC is considered an issuer because we have developed micro-credentials. This is a platform where issuers can house their micro-credentials that have been vetted by Digital Promise. So they have an extra stamp of approval. And that way, folks have an easy one-stop shop that they can go to look for micro-credentials that are aligned to their professional learning needs. And there are a lot of ways that they can search for these micro-credentials. So you see the first thing that you see in the URL bar that the site that I went to was microcredentials.digitalpromise.org. So I can search for a micro-credential by topic. So I might want to search for poverty or technology or ethics or teacher behavior. I can search for a lot of different topics. I can also search by organization. So I'm going to show you that right now. If you see there are some, I mean, not a huge list, but a nice list of agencies and organizations that have developed micro-credentials that have been approved by Digital Promise. And you see that we are in good company because the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative is there, but they're there with groups like National Geographic, where they're like, let's see, Digital Promise has quite a few different arms of their agency that have developed micro-credentials. A lot of our schools are familiar with Educators Rising, because that's the program that helps bring on pre-service teachers and help elevate them into the profession. Future Ready Schools, KVEC has worked very closely with Future Ready Schools and Tom Murray, so you're very familiar with those folks. So you see, this is a nice group of folks who actually develop micro-credentials for use by educators in terms of professional learning. So I'm going to show you our KVEC page. And so our micro-credentials are arranged by stacks. So you see this first stack has a little heading above it that says shared leadership. So these are micro-credentials that have sort of grown out of the work that we have done with programs such as ACT, Activating Catalytic Transformation, and our work with our content area consultants in ELA and math. So you see these are very specific to that kind of work. So the one I mentioned earlier, assessment literacy, there is that micro-credential. So we also have a stack that is starting to be developed in computer science. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time and tell you about these two stacks. One of them, teaching rural students from poverty. Our associate director, Dr. Desi Bowling, is a national trainer with the Ruby Payne Group. So, you know, being in Eastern Kentucky, we're very familiar with Ruby Payne and her framework of poverty. So these two are the first two. We have 3 more that are being developed in that stack. So the first one, these are a little bit out of order because the first one that an earner would want to do if they wanted to follow the stack is understanding types of poverty. And this micro-credential helps an educator learn more about the demographics of their students and how knowing about their background, knowing about what kind of poverty is this student coming to me from, what are their circumstances surrounding that lifestyle, are they able to join extracurricular activities, do their parents have transportation, how am I going to reach out to the parents if I have a concern or a question? What is it that I need to know about the demographic data about my students in order to plan high quality, rigorous instruction that that student can relate to? So that is the first one in that stack. And then the second one that goes along with that is building relationships. So once I know my students, then how do I use that knowledge to build relationships with them? And then the second one is a project that Robert and I have been very involved in. And this is a project that came to us through an opportunity with the Kentucky Department of Education around working with practitioners in our region. So special education teachers and administrators who have expertise and skills and competencies in certain areas of instruction for students with disabilities. We have partnered with them to train them how to develop a micro-credential, to support them through the development of a micro-credential, and then to actually release these micro-credentials for other educators to earn. So there will be 12 total in this stack. 4 of them have been released so far. 4 will be released before the end of June, and then the rest of them will be offered in the summer. So you see that we have a co-teaching micro-credential. We have one on curriculum-based measurement, one on how do you use questioning and other strategies with students with disabilities to get them to talk about the way that they're thinking, to talk about their metacognition. And then the last one is about how do we provide feedback, actionable feedback to students so that they actually improve their work based on the feedback that they give. So we are very lucky. By the time that this work is done, we will have over 20 micro-credentials that are being offered nationally. And if you notice, there is a keyword listed on each of these badge images at the bottom. There's a $, and it says free. And I'm not sure how much longer that will be in place, because with micro credentials, they are work intensive on our end, because as an educator submits their work to be scored, it's not like a computer scores it. It's not like you can just read through and say yes or no. These micro credentials, when an educator submits to us, they get that actionable feedback that we're talking about. They will get feedback even if they are not successful, so successful or not, they will get feedback from us that will help them to improve what they have submitted. So that takes a lot of work. And you'll notice that if you look at other micro credentials that are hosted on the Digital Promise page, they have assessment fees attached to them. Many of them have assessment fees attached to them. They're not exorbitant. We're talking about maybe a $30 or $40 assessment fee. And when you think about the grand scheme of an educator having to take a day off of school, to travel, to pay a registration fee for a conference, and to do all of that and still not have a credential that says you've actually learned something and applied it in your classroom, this is definitely the more cost-effective solution to professional learning, and also brings back more bang for your buck with that professional learning.
Well, this definitely provides options regardless of zip code. I mean, if you talk about getting professional learning and accessibility, this equals the playing field.
Yeah.
Because it's right there for everyone at school or at home. That's great.
It's different than what we used to do. You know, we used to have travel everywhere for everything. It's great that you guys have worked on this and set this up for our teachers to make life a little easier. You know, it's hard being a teacher, and this is great.
It is. And Danny, one of those pieces, what's made me realize in this time of this pandemic is that even though I am an introvert and I could probably live forever in a cave somewhere, but we miss that human interaction.
Right.
And, when we have meetings here at KVEC, there's something to be said about an educator getting to work with other folks, to be able to come, sit at a table, have conversations with other educators. These PLCs, they allow that to happen too.
Yeah.
We have examples of schools and districts that are working on micro-credentials as PLCs or even as entire schools. We looked at our school improvement plan, and we looked at our report card, and we looked at our data, and oh gosh, we need to work on student engagement because we have a very different version or vision of what student engagement is across all of our teachers. So we're going to work on one together. And my submission would be very different from yours if we were in the same school working on the same micro-credential, because I'm working with my students and you're working with your students. But it still gives us an opportunity to have conversation about what we're doing in our classroom. So it still has a very social, collegial feel to it, but it is not so expensive, and it does not take that educator out of their classroom, which is where they need to be. They need to be in their classroom. They don't need to be outside of their classroom, because with professional learning, it has to be, we had this conversation earlier today, that the true value, the true sweet spot of professional learning is when you can say, okay, here's my trajectory of professional practice and it's going up. And then here are my student outcomes, and where those two meet, my student outcomes are going up, my professional practice is going up, it's improving, then that is that sweet spot of professional learning where it's doing what it really was designed to do.
That's great.
For everything you said right there, that was the whole purpose of designing the rank change process through the continuing education option. How can we bring, and not just micro-credentialing, but competency-based learning into a system where teachers develop a plan specific to their needs and their students' needs, and they get incentivized. And I know the word currency goes around a lot, but the currency is a rank change and the pay that goes with it. Plus you have all these badges that say, I am competent in all these areas. Now, as a school leader or district leader, I'm looking for those folks to lead initiatives in my district or my school. And this gives me a great opportunity to work with my staff to create something great.
And we are just so lucky to be where we are, and for our director and our associate director to have this vision about this work and how important it is, and then for us to be able to make those connections with a lot of these other national organizations that believe the same. Robert has done a phenomenal job every year for now, this year being the fourth year of actually of KVEC, the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, being the convener of other agencies and organizations who provide competency-based professional learning through micro-credentials for folks who are interested in that, for folks who are interested in the policy around that, to come together as part of a summit. And, this year with the pandemic giving us a little problem with actually convening people face-to-face, that didn't slow us down because, digital professional learning is a thing. So how can we offer digital professional learning about micro-credentials to help others either enter this arena because they've never been there before, or to continue to improve and learn from each other, and then also think of ways to advance that type of professional learning. So, Robert, you may want to talk about that a little bit because the agenda that you've put together is phenomenal.
Thank you. But I think of this as an opportunity for folks to look at what barriers they have in place. And even though the pandemic has been here, it really hasn't put any barriers on us whatsoever because we are a forward-thinking group. And this is just another opportunity for us to get folks together. So the way this summit's going to be organized, it's going to be organized into 5 different sessions beginning June 16th. And every 2 weeks, we'll have another hour and a half session on specific topics. Anyone that's interested, the link for the registration will come across the page, or you can email Jennifer at jennifer.carroll@kentuckyvalley.org. Is that one of your emails?
That's one of my emails.
Okay. Or robert.brown@hazard.kyschools.us, so we can send you the information. But the link is going to be posted here that you can write down and go and register. It is free. So the first one's going to be on Micro-Credentials 101. And so it's going to be a deep dive into micro-credentialing, how to get involved in developing systems of micro-credentialing. So it's going to be a wonderful, get your feet wet, up to your knees even, into micro-credentialing and look at how you can change the culture of learning in your school and districts. We're about out of time. Danny, do you have anything else for the good of the day before we close off?
Well, the good of the day, it has been a good day. It's nice to see that, KVEC doesn't have to do this, doesn't have to provide this opportunity. I'm just thankful to work with a bunch of people, even you, Robert, that work together to try to help teachers, help kids. That's what this thing's all about. Let's help teachers, help kids. And Jennifer, I appreciate what you and Robert, what you're doing to help these kids and help these teachers be better in their classrooms. That's what it's all about.
Well, the positives of this COVID-19 have been limited. But one of the positives that I can say is it actually kept me out of a vehicle with you two, and I was able to do this virtually. So
if Robert was driving, that is a positive statement for sure.
No, I would have been driving. Just saying. Danny, quit being rude. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, Jennifer, we so appreciate your time today, and we've learned a lot. And it's always great to talk about micro-credentialing. I know you call yourself a micro-credential nerd because you get so excited, and you are. It's a wonderful thing. So I think it's a great prospect for educators to investigate, to pursue for micro-credentials. And on behalf of the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, thank Danny. And thank you, Danny. You'll be going back to the driver's or the passenger side of my truck.
Oh, no.
And Jennifer, thank you. But on behalf of the Kentucky Valley Education Cooperative, thank you all for joining us. And we'll holler at you later.
Holler at you later.